Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever looked at someone and just wondered what's really going on in there?
Oh, definitely. Like, you see someone navigate a party or a meeting so smoothly.
Yeah. And you think, how do they do that? It feels like some people just get people, like a superpower almost.
It really does feel like that
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think that feeling that it's some kind of, innate magic stops a lot of us from even trying. We see someone great at reading a room and think, oh, well, that's not me.
Right. I could never do that.
But that's the core idea in Patrick King's book, Read People Like a Book.
Yeah.
He argues pretty convincingly, I think, that it's not magic. It's not some mystical gift.
It's a skill.
Exactly. A learnable skill, something you can actually develop, kind of like emotional intelligence or social awareness. You don't need a PhD. You don't need CIA training, as he jokes.
Okay, I like that already. It makes it feel possible. So why is this skill, learning to, well, read people, why is it so important?
Well, just think about your day. How much of it involves other people?
Pretty much all of it, one way or another.
Right. From your family to work colleagues to meeting someone new, negotiating, even just, ordering coffee. People are constant. So understanding, understanding their character, maybe why they act a certain way, what motivates them.
Spotting unspoken things.
Yes. Or even potential deception. It's just fundamental for communicating better, for building relationships, for navigating, well, everything. It touches pretty much every single interaction.
But King points out the big hurdle, right? We can't actually, see inside their brain. It's a black box.
Exactly. We're stuck with the outside clues. What they say, how their face looks, their body language, their actions, their history, if we know it, even their appearance or tone of voice. That's all we get.
So it's like detective work, piecing together clues.
That's a great way to put it. And none of those clues gives you the full picture directly.
And this connects to what King calls theory of mind, our natural tendency to try and figure others out.
Yeah, it's like this built-in human drive. We try to create a little model in our own head of what someone else might be thinking or feeling. It's our brain's best guess based on those external signs.
A simplified model, not the absolute truth.
Exactly. But the better we get at gathering and, importantly, interpreting that data, the more accurate our internal model becomes.
So King's approach isn't like, here's the one secret theory. It's more like offering different ways to look at someone.
Spot on. He gives you different models, different lenses. Think of it like a toolbox. Each tool gives you a different angle, a fresh perspective.
And using them together gives a richer picture.
A much richer, more three-dimensional understanding. And what King hopes you do with that understanding is, well, mostly positive. More compassion, better relationships, parenting, romance, work smoother small talk, maybe spotting liars, resolving conflicts.
And he puts a lot of weight on those first encounters, right? When you barely know someone.
He does. Because first impressions happen fast, and we often have to make quick judgments. So his focus is on making those initial appraisals more accurate, grounding them in observation, in analysis.
Not just a gut feeling or a stereotype.
Exactly. And that's a really key point he makes early on. Reading people well isn't just about intuition. Instincts can play a part, sure, but they need to be backed up by method, by using these models, gathering data. The goal is accuracy, not just confirming what you already believe.
It sounds quite methodical, actually, like analyzing causes and effects.
It is. Looking at the why behind behavior, historical reasons, psychological, social, maybe even physiological. What caused this? What effect does it have? What triggered it now? Building that detailed picture.
And the interesting side effect you mentioned, understanding others helps you understand yourself.
It's almost guaranteed. As you start spotting patterns, motivations, defense mechanisms in others, you can't help but see them in yourself, too. It's incredibly revealing. Sometimes uncomfortable, maybe.
I can imagine. But if it's learnable, why are so many people not great at it? Or think they are when they aren't?
King hits on a few reasons. One is just overconfidence. Confirmation bias, right?
Right.
We remember the times our hunch was right, forget the times we totally misread someone.
Or we just never check if our initial judgment was accurate.
Exactly. We don't follow up.
Mm.
He suggests adopting a blank slate mindset, being open, acknowledging you don't know it all.
And he flags some big obstacles that trip people up, like context.
Oh, context is huge. A single sign, like someone looking away, means almost nothing on its own. Those articles like top 5 signs someone is lying, mostly useless because they ignore context.
Right. Are they looking away because they're lying, or did a bird just fly past the window?
Precisely. Or is there tense posture because they dislike you? Or are they just cold? Or maybe their back hurts. You need the whole situation.
So you need more than one clue. You need a pattern.
Data, not just a single datum, as he puts it, a collection of observations to see a trend. And crucially, that trend has to be understood within its cultural context.
Yeah. Eye contact means different things in different places.
Hugely different. Gestures, personal space. What's normal in one culture is awkward or rude in another. You ignore that, you're going to misinterpret things badly.
And then there's the baseline. What's normal for that specific person?
Absolutely critical. If someone's always talking fast and fidgeting, that's their normal. That's the baseline. The useful information isn't the fidgeting itself.
It's when they stop fidgeting or start doing something else unusual for them.
Exactly. It's the deviation from their personal baseline that tells you something might be going on. If your usually calm friend is suddenly pacing and wringing their hands, that's significant data.
And the final obstacle, maybe the hardest, understanding yourself, your own biases.
Yeah, this one's tough, but maybe the most important. Our own history, our fears, our assumptions, even just like having been lied to recently, it all acts like a filter. It colors how we see other people.
So if you're feeling insecure, you might see criticism where none is intended.
Totally. You project your stuff onto them. You end up learning more about your baggage than about them. King really stresses this. Understand your own lenses first. You have to.
That job interview example in the book makes this so clear.
It's a great one. Okay, so you're the interviewer. Candidate comes in, sits on the edge of their seat, hands clasped tight, talking fast.
Classic nerves. Easy to think, okay, maybe not confident.
Right. But King says, hang on, apply the principles. First, context. Job interviews are stressful. Most people are nervous. So the nervousness itself isn't necessarily a deep sign about their character. It's maybe just a reaction to the situation.
Okay. Need more data, need a baseline.
Exactly. Then they say something like, my last boss was too controlling, I prefer working independently. Okay, another data point.
But what does it mean? Can't take direction or genuinely proactive?
You don't know yet. It's just one comment. So you need that baseline. You ask about, say, university projects. They light up, describing working closely with a professor on something they loved.
Okay. So they can work under direction if engaged. It's more nuanced.
Exactly. You're building a richer picture. And then you factor in yourself. Are you maybe a bit intimidating? Could your presence be contributing to their nerves?
Understanding your own impact.
Right. So you're pulling it all together, the behavior, the stressful context, their history, their preferences, your own influence, to get a much more accurate read than just jumping to nervous and competent.
That scenario really highlights what King calls the problem of objectivity, how people see the same thing differently, like a joke maybe.
Yeah, a political joke, for instance. One person laughs, another thinks the teller is genuinely angry or offensive. Why the different read? King says it's often because we focus too much on just the words.
He cites those studies about communication breakdown, right? Like only 7% words.
It's a striking figure, often quoted. Something like 7% words, maybe 38% tone of voice, and a whopping 55% body language. Now, the exact numbers might be debated, but the principle holds.
If you're only listening to the words, you're missing the majority of the message.
You're missing so much. That nonverbal conversation, as he calls it, is critical. You have to look at the words and the nonverbals together, see if they match up.
He mentions a test for this, Simon Baron-Cohen's test.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. It measures social intelligence by showing you pictures of just people's eyes and asking you to pick the emotion they're feeling.
Just the eyes, wow.
Right. Minimal information. It tests how good you are at reading subtle emotional cues. The average score is apparently around 26 out of 36. Scores below 22 are sometimes linked with autism spectrum conditions.
So it gives you a sense of your baseline ability to read emotions from expressions.
Kind of, yeah. At least from the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And the average score suggests many of us might not be as naturally gifted at this as we assume, relying just on intuition. Maybe not always reliable.
A score of 26 means you misread 10 out of 36 based just on eyes. That's quite a bit.
It is. But, as King points out immediately, real life gives you way more data. You have the whole body, the posture, gestures, tone, context, what's not said.
The test is just one tiny piece.
Exactly. But it's a good reminder that we need to pay conscious attention because our gut isn't infallible.
And the best part is, these aren't fixed traits. You can get better.
Absolutely. Like any skill, it takes practice, attention, that test score. It's just a starting point. It can motivate you to actually work on improving using the kinds of methods King lays out.
Okay, that's a great foundation. So if we're ready to learn, ready to observe, where does King suggest we start? Chapter 1 digs into motivation.
Yes, because understanding the why behind someone's actions is just fundamental. King's point is, people do things for reasons. Conscious or unconscious, behavior isn't random.
It follows logically from who they are, what drives them.
Right. And if you can get a handle on their motivations, you can often work backwards from what they do to understand the person better, maybe even predict what they might do next or interact with them more effectively.
And motivations aren't simple. It's not just one thing driving us.
Oh, far from it. Psychological, social, financial, biological, evolutionary. It's usually a mix.
Yeah.
King says asking what people care about their goals, values, fears, interests is basically asking about their motivations. Understanding that helps you see things from their perspective.
He then offers different models to understand motivation. First up is Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. That sounds deep.
It is pretty deep.
Yeah.
Jung's idea was that we all have parts of ourselves we don't like or that don't fit our self-image. Pettiness, insecurity, anger, selfishness, maybe vanity.
Things we push away or hide.
Exactly. We disown them. And these rejected parts form our shadow. Jung thought real psychological health comes from acknowledging all of yourself, even the shadow parts. Doing that shadow work is about becoming whole.
But if someone's hiding their shadow, even from themselves, how can we see it?
That's the thing. It doesn't just vanish. It leaks out in subtle ways. Maybe in overreactions or things they judge really harshly in others or behaviors that just seem off, inconsistent with how they present themselves.
So observing those little inconsistencies or projections gives clues to the hidden parts.
King argues it can give you really deep insight into their character, but, and this is crucial, he stresses, using that insight with compassion.
Not to judge them or, use it against them.
Right. The goal isn't gotcha, it's understanding. If you sense someone's aggressive behavior might stem from a deep, hidden feeling of inadequacy, maybe you can respond with more patience, or find ways to validate their competence subtly, instead of just reacting to the aggression.
You can't fix their shadow for them, though.
No, that's personal work. But your understanding can change the dynamic. And importantly, King emphasizes that seeing the shadow in others is often a mirror.
It pushes you to look at your own shadow.
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
real work. But recognizing these patterns in others makes you more sensitive, more discerning about human nature in general. We all hide similar things, often. Weakness, fear of failure, feeling unlovable.
He mentions a practical tip, too. Notice how someone's behavior makes you feel.
Yeah, this is clever. If someone consistently triggers, say, annoyance in you or makes you feel superior or really uncomfortable, that feeling can be a clue. It might be reflecting something about their shadow that's poking at your stuff or triggering your projections. Like, feeling superior around someone insecure might highlight their hidden inadequacy and your own filters.
Another model is the inner child from Eric Berne's transactional analysis.
Right. This model says we shift between different ego states, parent, adult, and child. Understanding which state someone's operating from helps interpret their behavior and choose a better response.
Like the example of the colleague who flakes on deadlines, denies it, maybe pouts.
That sounds very much like the inner child state, doesn't it? Maybe they learned that avoiding responsibility worked when they were young. King's point is, if you recognize that, you can try not to slip into the default parent mode, scolding or lecturing.
Instead, try to engage their adult state.
Yeah. Address the issue factually. Look for adult solutions. It might not instantly change them, but it changes the dynamic. Even just understanding the source gives you more choices in how you react.
Then there's the really fundamental driver, the pleasure or pain principle.
This is maybe the bedrock. People are fundamentally motivated to move towards pleasure and away from pain. It influences everything, from tiny choices to huge life decisions.
And this makes people more predictable.
King argues, yes, in a way. Once you figure out what someone considers pleasure, a goal, a reward, or pain, a fear, a negative outcome, their behavior often makes more sense because that drive is so constant.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs fits here too.
It does. Maslow's pyramid basic needs like food and safety, then belonging, esteem, self-actualization describe stages of human drives. King suggests observing someone can give clues to which level they're currently focused on.
So you understand their priorities better.
Exactly. Someone worried about rent is driven by safety needs. Someone stable might be focused on esteem or belonging. It links back to seeking the pleasure of fulfilling those needs.
The last motivation model is ego defense, drawing from Freud.
King flags this as incredibly powerful and largely unconscious. Our ego, our sense of self, pride, self-esteem, works constantly to protect itself from feeling psychologically diminished. Less than. Wrong. Foolish.
And it's so strong it can make us twist reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unconsciously lie to ourselves, create elaborate excuses using defense mechanisms.
Like denial, rationalization, projection.
All those classic ones. They're automatic shields the ego throws up when it feels threatened by loss, rejection, failure, humiliation. They protect you from bad feelings right now, but King notes they're really unhelpful long term because they stop you from actually processing things or learning from mistakes.
So if someone just cannot admit they're wrong, even when it's obvious.
Their ego is likely working overtime. King tells that great story about Fred, the pop star fan. Fred's whole identity was tied up in this pop star. Then the star gets convicted of serious crimes, overwhelming evidence.
Fred's ego can't handle it. Admitting the idol is bad means he was wrong. His judgment was flawed.
Exactly. Yeah. That psychological pain is too much. So the defenses roar to life. Denial. It's not true. Rationalization. It's a conspiracy. The victims are lying. He builds a whole alternate reality to protect his self-image.
It shows how ego defenses can completely override logic.
They really can. And people build entire belief systems on these rationalizations. I failed because the system is rigged against me, not I didn't prepare enough. That becomes their truth. And King brings it back to us.
Our own ego does this. It stops us from hearing things that challenge our beliefs.
Right. You can't be defensive and truly listen at the same time. Understanding your own defenses is step one before trying to analyze anyone else's. You have to see your own filters.
Okay, so that covers the internal drives. King then shifts to the external clues, the body, the face, and looking for patterns or clusters.
Yeah, this is where he really digs into the idea that while words can lie, the body often tells the truth. The body doesn't lie, as the saying goes.
But with caveats, right? It's not foolproof.
Crucially, people vary. Context is vital. No single sign proves anything. It's about the overall picture.
Starting with the face. Micro-expressions.
Drawing on Paul Ekman's work, these are super fast, involuntary facial flickers, like 125th of a second fast. They're physiological reactions to emotion, happening even if someone tries to hide it. Universal across cultures for basic emotions, Ekman found.
And they're different from macro-expressions.
Yeah, macro expressions are the longer ones, lasting maybe seconds. Those can be faked. Microexpressions are too fast, too unconscious to control easily.
King talks about them relating to deception, but it's not just about lying.
Exactly. They can show up when lying, but they more generally signal stress, discomfort, tension, any strong, maybe hidden emotion. Lying causes stress, but so does telling a difficult truth or just being nervous.
So they're a clue, not proof of a lie.
A tool in the toolbox. Spotting them might increase your accuracy slightly, but don't rely on them alone. King suggests focusing less on, is this a lie, and more on, what emotion does this expression usually show? Then compare that to their words and the situation. Do they match?
What are some specific facial cues he mentions?
For nervousness, tight lips, little mouth twitches, maybe quivering lips or chin, furrowed brow, narrowed eyes, especially if it's unusual for them. Dislike or disagreement, pursing lips, maybe a quick eye roll, eyelid flutter, nose crinkle, squinting, slight sneer. Like getting a bad gift, polite words, but a flash of disgust. Stress release, fast blinking, repetitive things like cheek twitching, tongue biting, face touching. Maybe suspicious if they seem otherwise calm.
And asymmetry. Fake smiles often look lopsided.
That's often mentioned, yeah. Genuine emotions tend to engage both sides of the face more evenly. But again, just one piece of data. It's about gathering lots of these little observations and looking for patterns, for clusters.
Okay, moving from the face to the whole body. Body language.
King really emphasizes this, quoting Joe Navarro, the ex-FBI guy, calling the body a billboard, because nonverbal communication is so deep-seated. Biological, evolutionary, often automatic. Driven by the limbic brain, the emotional reactive part, which is harder to control than the thinking part that formulates words.
So the body speaks its truth more honestly.
Often, yes. Gestures, posture, movements, how we touch things, even clothes. They reveal underlying feelings. And remember that 55% figure. The bulk of communication is nonverbal. It's ancient. We communicated non-verbally long before language. We're all fluent instinctively. It's about tuning in consciously.
Like noticing those fight, flight, or freeze responses.
Exactly. Subtle signs of fear or discomfort. Freeze. Suddenly still, maybe legs locked around a chair, that deer in headlights look.
Yeah.
Flight. Body angled away, feet pointing to the door, putting a bag on their lap like a barrier. Fight. Could be aggressive posture or just sharp verbal sparring.
More subtle signs, too, like holding breath, tight lips.
Furrowed brow, dilated pupils, rubbing hands or neck, crossing limbs tightly, shallow breathing, all potential signs of tension.
And we often pick these up without realizing it.
Our intuition often senses them. King's approach is about making that process conscious, deliberately watching that channel
Hmm.
while listening to the words. It's always transmitting.
Okay, so putting it all together, especially for deception.
King is realistic. It's hard. Professionals struggle. Signs of stress from lying look like signs of stress from other things. The skill isn't finding one tell. It's interpreting the whole picture. Folded arms could be lying, could be cold, could be defensive, could just be comfortable.
So clusters are key again.
Absolutely essential. One gesture means little. Multiple signs of tension, evasion, discomfort maybe across the face and body, and contradicting the words in context. Now you have a stronger case for potential deception or significant distress. Learning this adds so much depth to understanding interactions.
What are the core principles King gives for building this skill?
Number 1, establish a baseline. Crucial. Know what's normal for that person before you can spot what's unusual. Tells or deviations from their norm. Number 2, look for unusual or incongruent behavior, things outside their baseline. And especially look for mismatches between words and body language.
I'm fine while rubbing their temples and sighing.
Classic example. Third, gather plenty of data clusters. Don't jump to conclusions from one sign. Fourth, body language is dynamic. Watch the flow, the changes, how they react. Fifth, context is everything. Always consider the situation, the environment, their personality.
So it's not a checklist, it's ongoing observation.
Exactly. No shortcuts. Takes practice.
Yeah.
But it opens up a whole new world of information.
And look at the whole body, not just bits and pieces.
Yes. It works as a system. Words, face, body, all connected. Observing in person gives the most data.
He mentions general patterns, like closed versus open.
Yeah, high-level stuff. Closed postures, arms crossed, etc., often signal guardedness, shyness. Open postures, uncrossed, relaxed, suggest comfort, trust. Forward cues, leaning in, pointing, show interest, maybe dominance. Touching, stroking can be self-soothing or romantic interest. Abrupt, loud movements might be energy, anger, or fear. Mirroring someone often signals rapport or submission.
And the idea of behavior as holding.
Interesting concept. Is someone physically embodying holding on, tense, controlling, holding in, repressed, holding back, hesitant. Someone who seems all about force and control might show a cluster of tension cues. Tight lips, furrowed brow, shallow breathing, maybe rapid blinking. Context then helps figure out why they feel the need for control in that moment.
So face, body, look for clusters, baseline, context. Got it. Let's move to personality science. Chapter 3.
Right, because understanding someone's stable personality patterns gives you vital context for interpreting their specific behaviors in the moment. Personality offers a kind of predictive framework.
King looks at personality tests not to actually test people.
No, that defeats the purpose of observation. But the frameworks these tests provide, the traits they measure, are useful lenses for your observation. They're simplifications, of course, but helpful ones.
Like the Big Five model, Ocean.
Yeah, that's a major one in psychology. Widely researched, reduces personality to 5 broad traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and eroticism. Everyone falls somewhere on a spectrum for each.
Can you quickly define those again?
Sure. Openness, curious, imaginative, likes novelty versus cautious, conventional. Conscientiousness, organized, disciplined versus impulsive, careful. Extroversion, Big Five version, gets energy from external world. Social interaction versus introversion, gets energy from internal world. Solitude. Agreeableness, warm, cooperative versus critical, antagonistic. Neuroticism, anxious, insecure versus calm, stable.
And we use these as observational guides.
Exactly. You watch someone, listen, observe their space, and you make educated guesses. Where do they seem to fall in these spectrums? Then use that personality sketch as context. The example of the low agreeableness partner frowning at your idea.
Right. It's not necessarily rejection, it's just their baseline reaction style. Knowing that helps you not misinterpret.
Precisely. You persist, explain logically, and they might come around.
What about the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI? It's super popular.
Very well known. Developed by Myers and Briggs based on Jung, initially for job placement. It uses 4 dichotomies, presented as preferences.
Which are?
Extroverted, EVS, introverted I, source of energy. Sensing, S versus intuition, N, how you gather info, concrete facts versus patterns possibilities. Thinking, TVS, feeling, F, how you make decisions. Logic versus values, impact on people. Judging, J versus perceiving, P, how you like your outer life structured. Planned, organized versus flexible, spontaneous.
Giving the 16 four-letter types.
Right, like INFJ or ESTP.
Yeah.
King mentions the common stereotypes, but quickly points out its scientific weaknesses.
Like forcing people into boxes.
Yeah, it's binary, either E or I. What if you're in the middle? And test reliability isn't great. People often get different results later. Mood, context, life changes can shift things. It can also lead to really simplistic stereotyping.
So how is it useful for observing others, if it's flawed?
King suggests using it ad hoc, like the Big Five. Not as a rigid label, but as useful questions to ask yourself while observing. Do they seem more E or I, more S or N, more T or F, more J or P? It gives you dimensions to look for.
And you can sort of test your guesses.
Yeah. Try framing something logically for a suspected thinker versus focusing on feelings for a suspected feeler. See how they respond. Notice if someone seems to need closure, J, or prefers keeping options open. But remember context, someone might be different at home versus work.
He also mentions Kiersey temperaments quickly.
Just briefly, Kiersey grouped the 16 MBTI types into 4 broader temperaments: guardian, artisan, idealist, rational. Gives another high-level way to categorize general tendencies or values you might observe.
And the Enneagram.
This one's more focused on core motivations, fears, and growth. It has 9 basic types: reformer, helper, achiever, etc., each driven by a core fear or desire. King gives examples like investigators being researchers, challengers being assertive leaders.
So it offers a different angle on the why behind behavior.
It does. Again, you can't definitively type someone else just by watching, but the 9 archetypes give you another set of potential motivational patterns to look for. Does their behavior seem driven by a need to be perfect, reformer, or a need to be loved, helper?
The big takeaway for all these personality models is use them as flexible tools, not rigid boxes.
Exactly. They're lenses, frameworks, ways to organize your observations, keep gathering data, stay flexible, don't stereotype. People are complex.
Okay, shifting gears to something many people are keen on, lie detection. Chapter 4.
Yeah, it's a big draw.
Yeah.
We want to know if we're being deceived, right? Self-protection.
But King starts with a reality check. Most of us are terrible at it.
The research is pretty stark. Performance often barely above chance, like 54% accuracy. Even trained professionals often don't do much better. Very few people are naturally gifted lie detectors.
So trusting your gut feeling isn't reliable here.
Often not, King argues. Our intuition feels strong, but it's easily fooled. Why? Well, the cues are variable, liars differ, signs of lying overlap with signs of stress. Plus, we tend to want to trust people. Our own biases get in the way.
Step 1. Admit you're probably not as good as you think.
Humility is key. Recognize your biases.
And King's big point, good lie detection isn't passive, it's conversational.
This is crucial. You're not just watching for a twitch. You're in the conversation, asking questions, guiding it, applying subtle pressure. It's about the whole interaction.
What kind of verbal tactics does he suggest? Strategic questions.
Yes. Ask open-ended questions. Get them talking, providing details. Liars often prefer short, rehearsed answers. Honest people are usually fine elaborating. Watch out for inconsistencies or maybe story dumps, blurting everything out at once. Liars might also avoid I statements, creating distance.
Delays and evasiveness are red flags too.
Big time. Taking too long to answer, pausing awkwardly, giving rambling non-answers to direct questions, classic stalling tactics while they invent something. Truth tellers usually answer directly or just say, I don't know.
And asking unexpected questions they couldn't have planned for.
That's where they often trip up. They rehearse the main story, not the minor details. King also advises, if you suspect a lie, don't reveal it right away. Let them keep talking, see if they dig themselves deeper. How they react when finally confronted is also telling anger versus confusion.
What about collaborative lies?
King mentions research suggesting liars telling a story together often don't elaborate on each other's points as naturally as truth tellers recalling a real event.
Using surprise seems effective too.
Because liars prepare. Spontaneous lying is harder. So asking something suddenly, catching them off guard. Watch their reaction, sudden changes in confidence, speech speed, eye contact. Evasive answers to simple yes-no questions.
Or that sudden anger deflection.
Exactly. Why would you ask me that? Hiding panic. Keep it casual yourself, but apply pressure with quick questions. Catch them in an unguarded moment.
Increasing cognitive load sounds like the ultimate technique.
It's based on solid psychology. Telling the truth is easy, just remember. Lying is hard work, remember the invention, act normal, monitor the listener, huge cognitive load.
So you make it even harder for them.
Right. Ask complex questions. Ask them to recount events in reverse order. Ask about tiny, irrelevant details. Introduce a slight inaccuracy into your question based on what they said. See if they correct it or get confused.
And this mental effort makes them more likely to slip up.
Yes, verbally and non-verbally. All that thinking makes it harder to manage emotions and body language. King notes, liars might seem emotionally detached because faking emotion takes effort too. Faked emotions often seem off, weird timing, too long, wrong intensity.
And the stress leaks out physically.
Yes, the cognitive load and the anxiety or guilt increase arousal. So you see more blinking, pupil changes, speech errors, self-touching, neck, face, maybe adjusting clothes, those comfort-discomfort cues Navarro talks about. Look for clusters of these, especially when you're applying cognitive pressure.
So the strategy is conversational pressure plus observing clusters of stress cues, not relying on one magic tell.
That's the gist. And use your intuition as a signal to investigate further. But don't base your conclusions solely on it. Combine it with deliberate observation and questioning.
Okay, let's wrap up with the final chapter. Honing the power of observation itself, especially for quick reads.
This brings it all together. Applying the motivation models, nonverbal reading, personality insights, especially when you don't have much time. Getting better at cold reading based on real clues.
He talks about thin slicing, making quick judgments from minimal data.
Exactly. Coined by Embody and Rosenthal. It's our ability to find patterns and make surprisingly accurate assessments from very brief exposure, sometimes just seconds. Research suggests these initial reads can be quite good. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in Blink.
It sounds largely unconscious.
King describes it that way, like experts sensing a fate artwork instantly, or Gottman predicting divorce from watching couples briefly. But our emotional state can affect it. Being sad might make you less accurate, maybe because you overthink.
So how do we use this thin slicing intuition wisely?
Balance it with conscious analysis. That gut feeling, it's a valuable first hypothesis. Don't ignore it, but don't automatically trust it either. Use it to guide your focused, deliberate observation. Check it against more data.
And making smart, conscious observations, what should we focus on?
After that initial slice, slow down. King highlights focusing on words and images.
Reading word choice again?
Yeah, it's subtle but revealing. Simple versus complex language. Jargon smart or trying too hard. Pronouns we versus I. How they talk about cause and effect. Emotionality. Vocabulary choices reveal their frame of reference. Even mimicking your words signals connection.
And reading possessions and environment, like Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly. Look at what's right there. Their home, office, car. Organized or chaotic. Minimalist or full. What objects do they display? These are clues about identity, habits, values, emotional regulation. Excesses and notable lacks are interesting.
Photographs, too, even old yearbook photos.
King mentions that study on Duchenne, smiles, genuine smiles reaching the eyes in yearbook photos, correlating with later happiness and relationship success compared to polite, mouth-only smiles.
And social media photos.
Surprisingly predictive, according to some research King cites. Profiles showing varied interests, friends, travel often correlate with positive traits like conscientiousness, agreeableness, openness. People's online self-presentation, while curated, often reflects personality fairly accurately.
Observation isn't just passive. We can actively ask questions.
Yes, especially indirect or hypothetical ones, to get past people's defenses. Just like asking yourself direct questions often yields unhelpful answers. Asking others directly can too. But hypotheticals reveal a lot.
Like what?
What's your favorite book film? The why is key. What values or worldview does it tap into? What would you rescue from a fire? Reveals core priorities, possessions, people, practical items, sentimentality. King references the film Force Majeure and the father's reaction, what scares you most. Reveals perceived vulnerabilities, fears, physical, social, existential. Even saying nothing is revealing.
These questions give concrete behavioral data, even if hypothetical.
Exactly. Data you can analyze using all the other tools to build a richer understanding.
So the final takeaway is blending quick intuition with deliberate observation of words, things, photos, and using smart questions to rapidly build an insightful picture.
That's a great summary. It's an integrated skill set.
Wow. Okay, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Patrick King's Read People Like a Book. We started with the idea that reading people is learnable, not magic. We looked at understanding motivations, the shadow, inner child, ego defenses.
Then we moved to the external cues, micro-expressions, body language clusters, the importance of baseline and context.
Layered on personality frameworks like the Big Five and MBTI as observational tools, not rigid labels.
Tackled the complexities of lie detection, focusing on conversational pressure and cognitive load rather than simple tells.
And finally, explored the power of observation itself, from rapid thin slicing to analyzing words, possessions, and using insightful questions.
It really provides a comprehensive toolkit, doesn't it? Emphasizing observation, analysis, context, and self-awareness.
And the goal isn't just manipulation, but deeper understanding, compassion, better relationships.
Exactly. It's a practice, an ongoing journey. You don't need perfection, just curiosity and attention.
Which brings us to a final thought. We spent this time talking about how everything, our body, words, belongings, motivations, communicates things about us.
So what if you took these lenses, the ones Patrick King suggests for observing others, and turned them inward?
What would you see?
What might your own typical behaviors, your go-to words, your most treasured objects, or your deepest fears reveal about your underlying motivations, your shadow, your ego defenses? What message are you sending out, even when you think you're not saying anything at all?